Hi, everyone. Welcome to a virtual Factory Berlin. My name is Charlotte Hook, and I'm the Events Programming Manager here. If you haven't heard of us before, Factory Berlin is a diverse community of over 4,000 members. We bring together creatives, corporate startups all together under one roof. We curate our members to be the most entrepreneurial, ambitious individuals who help and empower each other's work. We also empower their work as well through a couple of different methods. So we have our two physical campuses, one in Berlin-Kreuzberg, where we are today, and one in Berlin-Mitte. We also have our digital network, which allows our members to connect online. And finally, we have events and programming like this for like-minded individuals to come together and connect over ideas. This particular event is called On the Red Couch. It's hosted in collaboration with one of our partners, Beats by Dr. Dre. And it's named after a story from Andy Warhol's factory. So in the 1960s, Billy Name brought a red couch to the factory, and it became the place for artists to come and crash and share their stories. So we've continued that tradition here. This particular On the Red Couch welcomes Lutz Leichsenring to the stage with moderator Lewamm Ghebremariam to discuss the success of United We Stream in bringing together the music scene with its audience during the COVID-19 pandemic. This will be a 45-minute moderated conversation with 15 minutes audience questions. So if you have any questions, please ask them in the YouTube chat. Thank you so much and enjoy this event.
Yes, hello. Welcome to this On the Red Couch talk from my end as well. I'm Lewamm Ghebremariam, as Charlotte kindly already pointed out. I am an activist. I'm a senior campaign strategist at change.org in Germany. And I have accompanied and advised numerous campaigns. I pride myself on helping niche in this kind of topics to become mainstream, including MuteRkelly Germany or the currently passed law against upskirting, but I'm also an honorary board member of the Berlin Club Commission. And I work mainly in the field of awareness and diversity, or diversifying club culture. That's where I also know my dear friend and coworker Lutz from, that I'm going to interview tonight on the topic of connecting in isolation. Welcome, Lutz.
Hi.
Hi. Lutz, you have been in the industry for more than 20 years. You went straight out of high school, started with your own events. You've been running a restaurant in the past. You have had a club in the past. You've been the spokesperson for the Club Commission for over 10 years now, right? And one could say you are the night mayor of Berlin when it comes down to clubs and club culture. You also run two companies, right? Where you consult on nightlife and events, right? You also bring up talent, if I understand right. And you have co-initiated the project that most people would know is United We Stream. And yeah, we want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Me too, actually. I have been part of that project. I remember I was still in the US at the time and I had to come back because of COVID. So I kind of knew something was going on, but I didn't know what was going on because I kept receiving these like WhatsApp messages. A lot of like urgency was felt, but I was just not there. And when we look back at United We Stream or the project, like I'm just going to point out a few things that have happened in the past year during this pandemic. The project has resulted in 467 streams or locations, basically streaming in over 111 cities. And we've had over 2,282 artists performing, and a total of 1.7 million was actually donated, which is a huge number, and over 35 million viewers. Can you talk a little bit about the early days of that project that I just already like scratched on? Like, when did you realize, okay, we're going to have a huge lockdown, or like clubs are going to be the first to shut down, and that you needed a solution yesterday? What was that situation like at the time?
Yeah, we actually had very early conversations, early in terms of before the first case of COVID was in Berlin. And we had meetings at Kit Kat Club. We had meetings in our office. We were just, didn't know what, we knew there's a wave coming, but we didn't know how big that is and what's really going to happen. And in that time, we tried to think about what could be like hygiene measures that we can put in place. How can we create awareness of visitors? If you're coming from a certain destination, please be aware, stay home maybe first before you go out, because that is something that is very crucial. Because nightlife is very, very vulnerable, and it can really get stigmatized very fast. So if you would have a lot of cases in nightclubs, at parties, the public would not, give you any pardon. It will go, you were on all the headlines, and we actually had there, because there were cases in the early days in clubs, and it was really pushed
It was
through.
like a vilifying people that go to clubs and the whole scene, basically. I remember that.
Yeah, so those people who have just fun and don't really care about society, this kind of attitude you're gonna hear. So for us, it was really, really a very tough time, because we couldn't really do anything. We were in a dilemma, because on the other side, we were coming from the winter time, really bad month for clubs in terms of income, and so there was nobody really having a lot of money back off the hand. So if you would have to shut down your venues and you wouldn't have any money, you would run out after one weekend already. So mid of March, Friday the 13th,
horrible day to this day.
That was the day of the shutdown, and there were basically two discussions happening, and I was kind of in my living room having calls and coordinating different directions. And one was, let's do a crowdfunding campaign, donation campaign, and the other one, let's do streams to show culture, to provide insights, what's happening, panel talks, all these kind of things. And then we just merged it to one project. And from the very first day, we had a lot of support. So Friday the 13th was, of course, week upcoming, but we were launching the project already on Wednesday the 18th. So we pulled up all the collaborations, all the clubs, reached out to clubs. Everything was very supportive in that time, as I remember. And we also, there was a website set up. There was collaborations with Arte concert set up. They were trusting us from the very first day and saying, yeah, we give you every night to stream, without working with them before. So that was, of course, a collaboration between a club that we used, but to have this organization, Club Commission, that was building up trust and relationships, was really helpful in the time to start off that big from the very first day.
So basically, the political work that you and the Club Commission as a whole has been doing, would you say that helped reduce the hurdle when it came down to this moment, that all clubs basically benefited from long-term political lobby work that has been done on behalf of the clubs?
Yeah, and to understand, my role as a spokesman is to get all the information that is being done from the big team. We have a board of 15 people. We have an office with another 12 or 13 employees. We have a lot of voluntary workers in working groups. So it is a lot of background convincing work being done. To have meetings with conservative politicians from a certain district is really important if you really want to have club culture rooted in a certain district, because you need all different political parties' support, because there is not there's club culture or music is a topic that goes through all the different departments all the different district levels, because you have to deal with culture, you have to deal with economy departments, you have to deal with social departments, and so there are a lot of conversation need to be done, and the club commission, of course, did a lot of these preparational work that in a crisis you can really start off better.
Yeah, and it kind of became the umbrella for that project in the beginning, definitely. And you already pointed out like how many people like were working or are still working in the club commission. But to basically take off with the project United We Stream, like how was it like having so many people on board? Like maybe you can speak to how much time and effort also individuals have put in, and like people from, was it like only people that worked in club culture before like adding to this project, or like?
We had, of course, a team of the club commission. We also had we united basically for this project with Reclaim Club Culture, which is an initiative that has not really an organizational structure besides a lot of individuals collaborating. So we really came together in this crisis, and I think that was a very strong sign. It also showed that I don't know, we had like 50 clubs lined up to want to stream, you know. I mean, that we didn't have to convince anybody. They basically asked us, they want to be part of it. And that also shows Berlin club culture as, you know, in crisis, we collaborate, we work together, we share. Because the other option would be that everybody does their own crowdfunding and donation campaign, and everybody, you know, advocates for themselves. And that's what's actually happening in many other cities. So to have this united approach was really helpful. We were early, we were quick. It was the right time, the right people, the same, and in the right place. And we, as you said, we had quickly almost 200 people involved in different working groups, WhatsApp working groups, conference calls, which was, you know, in these times also not very common for a lot of people. So, you know, after 1 year, you're used to it. But in that time also to set us up, to have the right, some people didn't want to work with Google, the other one didn't work with Zoom. You have to install stuff, like all these like early, early sicknesses that you had and have to overcome. But yeah, I think I never worked so much in my whole life in these first 3 months, because it was every day a lot of pressure, a lot of communication.
Yeah, I do remember these days. Like, I mean, obviously I'm moderating, but it was like even after 1 week, it was an absolute shock to come back to the conversations, and also like this feeling of awe of what is happening. Like, and I personally felt that the lockdown, like 1 year later, although obviously I want the clubs to open, and that's what we all wish for, but I do see that there was kind of a like a forced step into the future as well, where a lot of Berlin club culture was very analog and not accessible maybe for people. And I feel like that project made it accessible also for people who wouldn't know about club or club culture. And yeah, just like the streaming of music and dancing and all that goes with it, you know, connection to people.
What it showed was that, you know, we're not just complaining about that we need support, because we are the ones which had to close the first and probably the ones which opened up the last. We also could show this, that what Nightlife is for us. It is artists on a stage in an empty building, empty dance floors. You know, it really showed how this crisis affected us with showing art, you know. And I think that was a strong message, and we made it to all the big media outlets, we made it to the big news shows, and that of course helped. Then when we negotiated support emergency programs, the clubs are now covered by programs of the cultural departments on the federal level and on the state level, which was also not very obvious, to be honest. You know, if
it's
club
been a long
is
time
culture.
discussion to make clubs cultural heritage, right?
Exactly. So we are in the situation that we are an economic factor, a social and cultural factor, and then you also have to, get access to fundings, of course.
And yeah, I mean, looking at March, Friday the 13th, you already mentioned it, is coming up, our first anniversary in lockdown, which is kind of sad. Also time to reminisce a little bit. And I think the audience might find it interesting where United Restream stands today, and are you still going with the project? Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
I pulled out during the summertime, and I'm now in a board of an independent organization that is now running United Restream, and it is now a global project. It is a project that a lot of other cities in the world adapted. They use this as a tool to open doors to politicians as well. The first time they can show a united scene, even if it's just a digital stage, but they can show we were collaborating. We are in danger. We need support, and that helped. Not in all the different regions, to be honest, because there's a totally different situation in Latin America than in Asia, than in African countries. I mean, in Africa, we are only in South Africa till now, but we see that it helps to get in conversation, and it helps to visualize what club culture is about. And in some cases, it also helps to open doors to sponsors and financial supporters, which is also an option if you don't have any governmental support. And United Restream is now Kultur- and Kreativpilot. So there get some awards have been received, and there's also some funding from governments in Germany, at least, also in some other countries as well. Some other cities were really successful with the tool. Manchester, for instance, raised more money than Berlin. They also
shout out to Manchester.
Shout out to Manchester. And so every I think it is about the transformation that is happening, as you mentioned, transformation from analog to digital, getting being more accessible, but also creating awareness, having our own channel towards issues like diversity, door policy discussions, like all the club cultural discussions that are happening usually happened on different platforms, and now we have our own platform, which is really helpful, and we can also steer it a bit better. What are the topics that we are interested in?
You already said a little bit that you got to leverage United Restream, and when it came down to negotiating, also possibly with politicians, or not possibly, but with politicians. And ultimately, obviously, the goal is to reopen. And as you pointed out, clubs might be the last to open. And we teased a little bit about the global nighttime recovery plan that you also kind of co-initiated, if I understand right. And maybe you can explain that project a little bit into detail.
Yeah, after creating awareness and receiving donations, the next steps would be also then to reinvent nightlife again. Because we know this crisis is leading to a lot of destruction and a lot of change, but it also opens possibilities, because so from my personal view, I receive much more open-minded people towards our culture than before. So you are able to get in a conversation easier, and to also have not just receive no's all the time. You can discuss things better. And in this, if you have access, you also then have to provide solutions. And since I built up a global network, we have now club commissions and night mayors all over the world. I think more than 60 cities have a representative organization that is negotiating between the creative scene, the creative nightlife, and the government structures. And I use that platform also to once provide United Restream to them, that they can also use it as a tool. But on the other side, also to look into what are they doing? How are they responding to this crisis? And so we created a plan that is called the Global Nighttime Recovery Plan. We decided to go into 7 different directions. So we created 7 chapters. Already 4 of them are released, and they are also free to download on nighttime.org. And the Global Nighttime Recovery Plan is a collaborative project with academics, scientists, but also operators, advocates, all kinds of people from nightlife, but also from the science community. And we looked in the first chapter that we released in June last year into how to use outdoor space during the crisis, but also how much has outdoor relevance for club culture. Because you get pushed out of city centers more and more because people think they're dominating and they are more relevant than you. And I think that is also for us a chance to discuss this again, to bring this back to the table. The second chapter was then focusing on indoor space. How can we use space differently in these times? There was one example from London where a club turned into a bike repair store because a lot of people were biking and wanted to repair their bikes, and so they needed a place to go, and then a club opened up for it. Or Berghain as an exhibition space. So there were some good examples also how you can utilize your space in a different way. The third chapter then focused on 24-hour cities, because what we also realized that cities that are dark and shut down at night with curfews are not the cities that we want to live in. It's like there's this phenomenon of an empty bus stop. You don't want to stand at an empty bus stop at night. So you want to have people around you. You feel safer. And there is the other theory that people think if a city is shut down and curfews are in place, the city is more safe. And it's actually not. You don't feel safer and you don't feel very welcome. So also this idea of creating 24-hour cities, and Berlin is since 1949 a 24-hour city. And we wanted to also share this message and think about how this has lighting to be at night to make it more comfortable. How is transportation to be like, that also the public transportation system is in place. And then the last chapter that we released just a couple of weeks ago was then looking into the workers of clubs, the people behind the scenes. When we had this, we had a conference call about this topic a couple of days ago, and we had about 100 people joining from all over the globe. And I opened this discussion with an interesting or a nice story that I heard about, that John F. Kennedy once went to the Cape Canaveral and he saw a sanitary person walking by and ask him, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he said, "Hey, we're bringing a rocket to the moon." And to understand that every puzzle in nightlife is so important. Runners, wardrobe, bartenders, everybody is part of nightlife, and we didn't recognize it enough. I think in this crisis we could cover short work, like with short work money, the full employees, but a lot of people, mini jobs, just fell between the cracks, and that is really
harmed nightlife. Yeah. You've already said like the workers, etc., right? And when I think about friends of mine, or like I run a party as well, people that were on our collective staff or whatever, they reoriented themselves towards things that actually help them through this crisis. And I'm not 100% sure that we will actually get the team in that way back together. How did you tackle, like how did the conversations you had at the global nighttime recovery plan go with actual workers? Like what is their perspective on the future, or like how long they might actually do other things until they come back to nightlife or not?
This is a really sad story, actually, and it's so you're in such a dilemma when you work in the event industry nowadays, because at once you really also want to make sure that your workers are safe and nobody get infected, and also you want to kind of protect the scene from being exposed as as the people don't care about such a pandemic. But on the other side, there is not enough help. And especially for people who are self-employed, for people who have mini jobs, and it's very, very different from country to country how these people survived. And I can tell that are probably in the most comfortable situation in Germany compared to other countries in Europe, but also in the US. We also looked into the global south. So we also we are actually conducting a study now in 6 countries together with the GIC. It's focusing on Senegal, on Kenya, on South Africa, but also in the Middle East, Iraq, Lebanon, and Jordan. And we just saw the first numbers coming out of those surveys that we're conducting, and we saw that most of the people earn less than 25% of what they used to earn in the creative industry in 2019. So they lost 75% of their income, and that is devastating. And I think it's
and the livelihood is obviously affected because
super affected.
I'm assuming that that salary was already lower than what you might have earned in Germany or in the US.
Yeah, and then the living conditions are really for creatives when you also don't have any reputation or any acknowledgement of your creative work in some countries, then it's even harder. And I think it's something that we also have to look for. And we actually try to cover also some of the needs or create awareness of needs with United We Stream, because 8% of our total income went to the civil sea rescue. Because we knew from the very beginning, if we now collect money for the club scene, we also have to show that there are people out there who are even in a worse situation than us. So also create awareness for them who are really in a existential crisis.
When I think about vulnerability in club culture, I automatically also think about safer spaces, right? And a topic that I'm really close to at Club Commission. And when I used to go to panels the year before Corona, a lot of the conversations I would have was about gentrification and how gentrification also threatens safer spaces, particularly because it's kind of pushing people out of the city. But now that clubs or safer spaces have been shut for so long, I wonder how are things going with negotiating, for example, that tenants, like clubs as tenants, are protected to get kicked out if they cannot make their rent, or like, because it's just a feeling that more like smaller spaces, they don't have that much of a backing, or they haven't been running for long, that they might go extinct.
Yeah, I think there are now different theories what can happen, and it also of course depends on the amount of vaccines we get out in the next month, and if there is rapid testing being installed, and if we manage to lower the number of infections in the next month and weeks. But we are in a big transformation. A lot of the trends that we saw before the crisis are now really showing. Retail is not going back from the internet, So all the stores that are not providing a very specific service that you have to touch what you buy, or you want to see it. And I would say 90% of what you see in shopping malls, actually, people will buy online.
And Berlin has a lot of them.
We have 65 shopping malls. I don't really know why. But
nobody understands that. I think that's a question to the mayor at this point.
So this discussion about shopping malls was earlier, years ago, and then people thought maybe we create office space out of those shopping malls at one point. But I'm now asking myself, who needs office space in that amount in the future, when people do home office and also change the way they work and readjust in that space.
Like, from my perspective, I'm not going back five days a week to the office. Like, hey, shout out to my boss. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we've proven in the crisis that we can. The discussion was there before. Should we allow every coworker to go and work from wherever, as long as they are in the same time zone. And I don't think this trend will stop. I think more and more people will actually move out of the city. So also that's not an option.
So that is, of course, also a trend that people more and more look in the rural areas, in the outskirts. What you can see, that needs to be really observed if that is really a big change, that people also leave their inner city flats, or move all the way out of the city. But what we can see is that there are more options for us maybe in the future in inner cities. It's definitely a discussion of price, because clubs, cultural producers cannot pay high prices. If you know how clubs are structured with income and you have a curated program, there is not a lot of margin that you have to pay high rents. Otherwise, you turn into a mainstream place, or in a place that is focusing on selling alcohol and less offering artistic programs. So what we will see is, at one side, that a lot of real estate owners take the chance and maybe also cancel contracts, but they also have to think about what is the alternative. Who do they want to rent this place then? And yeah, so they don't really have a lot of options at the moment. So I'm carefully optimistic that we can, if we made it happen, that we still keep up with the emergency programs and are able to survive, then hopefully we can start into 2020 and upcoming. And yeah, and also here I see two ways which are sound maybe contradicting, but I think they're reasonable thesis. So one is, we have the Roaring 20s upcoming, crazy years that like we already experienced in Berlin, like not we did, but Berliners did sometime, our grand ancestors. But you definitely had a time in Berlin where you had this time between 1924 and 1930s, where you had these times of people freaking out between wars. And yeah, and I think these kind of times might come back, hopefully, excessive times. But on the other side, we also see that there was already a trend of using the space more artistically, healthy events, day partying. So there was a lot of change already happening, and there is a good option that a lot of spaces, and I'm also talking about the restaurants, that are maybe more middle good, medium good, and maybe also lose a lot of their customers, because people also tend to cook at home, healthy. Yeah, and if you have less tourists coming to the cities, who maybe also were the ones which are customers for these kind of restaurants, you see more in these touristic districts, there will also be a change. So I think we will have a big change upcoming, and we as a club commission have to make sure that the music driven, the cultural driven, the social driven clubs are the ones which survive.
That sounds really good. And yeah, it sounds like a crisis opportunity. I'm also like optimistic, to be honest, that the city can, or nightlife can always like reinvent itself. And speaking of reinventing, I would also like to talk to you about another project that you have been working on, called the Denkathon, sponsored by Jägermeister, that has happened. I don't want to lie, I think about exactly a month ago. It was like a weekend event, basically a hackathon, where people could think about how to reopen nightlife. And people involved were commoners, club goers, from all sorts of...
250 people were actively taking part in this online event. I think 1,000 signed up, but then also realized it is a lot of work that they have to do. But a hackathon, we called it Denkathon or Thinkathon, because we said it's not about hacking, it's not about programming an app or something. It's really about getting good ideas together and developing them, and then present them to a jury. And it was a full weekend, starting Friday, ending Sunday night. and it was really, really interesting to see so many people caring about their nightlife and thinking about solutions. And and every team had to provide a video of what they did, and you were one of the moderators, so you were in the background looking for good ideas and supporting the teams. And I think you already also saw that there were some good ideas coming up, right?
I can totally say that's true. Yes, I was in the back end, and a friend of mine said back end is the new backstage, and I am still laughing about it when
Digital
I think
backstage.
yeah, it's the back end is the new backstage, exactly. So I was very surprised, to be honest, because people came prepared as well. They have been thinking about this. They had over almost a year basically time to think about how can we get back to where we were, or how can we step into the future. Was there did you have any kind of expectation, or like hopes that were met or not met, or anything like that?
I just had the hope that we give also something back to the community, because we saw also that we were very limited in offering participation. You know, when we usually work in working groups, or when we organize protests, or when we any kind of project that we're setting up, it's always very collaborative, and a lot of people participate and are very engaged. And this year, because of social distancing and not able to do events, and protesting is also something where you have to be very careful how many people you bring on the streets and not have a backslash on it. So my best wish was, let's come together and have a good time, even if it's online and distance, but to exchange ideas and knowledge is just something that is and also thinking about maybe how you can provide some help, how you can also bring a bit of brain to this table and help to develop something. And yeah, it was an experiment. We used Slack, we used Mural, we used collaborative tools in the background, and it was also something a lot of people had to adjust who didn't use that before. So it was also a learning curve for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, also for me, like I haven't used Mural before. I've had experiences with other tools. What was the one takeaway or one surprise? I can't remember who won. No offense. I'm sorry. Was it something that you saw coming? Like, were you surprised by the actual, like, maybe the 3 best projects, or the 3? I'm not gonna say best because all of them were great.
A lot of solutions that were developed were very practical. Some of them were a bit too visionary, so they would take too much time to develop, need too much resources, and then we also don't know how long this crisis is going to take us, so it doesn't really make sense to develop something which you can launch in fall this year or something, and then it might not be needed anymore. But some of the ideas, and you can actually look them up on nachdenken.com. Nicht nachdenken, sondern Nachtdenken. The videos show some good ideas. I think the first 3 places were ideas, for instance, creating an app where all the rules and regulations concerning COVID, what you can actually do or not can do, being like at one place, which is also not happening till now. If you wanted to organize an event in that city, you would see all the detailed information, what is possible to do.
When's that coming out? When is that coming out?
Yeah, so I think those are some ideas we can also adapt as a club commission or as a LiveCom, which is our federal organization. to see if we can use stuff which came out of there. Another idea was how you can create an app that is guiding you through the city, you can experience basically by walking through the city culture, because you have local based information, and it's like a Pokemon game for culture.
I remember that one. That was a good one.
Yeah, and I think these kind of ideas maybe also stay, where you don't really they're helpful in the COVID times, because you're social distance and you walk, but you use your walk also to learn and to interact with people.
Totally. Nice. I think we are about the time to ask the audience for their questions. Maybe in the meantime, is this Nacht Thinkathon going to happen again? Are you planning on repeating something like that?
Yeah, I think there is a good chance that it in a certain way gets in the next level. But right now we also have to take care of the ideas that were coming up, that they also get feedback and maybe next steps being developed before we do the next Thinkathon.
It was a lot of work, for sure. Yeah, so from my end, thank you for this talk so far. And let's see what the audience at home has prepared in terms of questions. No, I'm entering my pin on this. Okay. So, okay. So let's start here. Managing such a big project must have been very challenging, especially under lockdown limitations. Did you use any of the HR gamification techniques you used with Young Targets?
Yeah, so to explain what Young Targets is one of the companies I was co-founding, and we wanted to reinvent the way of you do recruiting events, because recruiting events until we started were job ads or job fairs. So not a lot of people want to go to big space and walk from one booth to another and sell themselves, basically. So we did events that were more gamified and interactive, escape games to
Oh, I hate those. Oh my god.
So we didn't use, to answer that question, no, we didn't use that to onboard people, because that would be also very time consuming. And to be honest, Young Targets and all the events that we do are also in 100% Kurzarbeit, because we're not able to do any events at this moment. But gamification, I think, is something that is, I think, very important, because you to be very playful and showing what your skills are is just a very common way for this generation that is now looking for jobs to promote themselves in a playful way.
Definitely.
Hackathon is actually also a good tool to present yourself.
Definitely. Also, like, there were the jurors or judges, I don't know how to say that, the people that were leading these groups, and obviously they know people. It's like networking and showing off your skills all the time.
I just remember that I got an email after this Denkathon from a participant asking if I can write a letter that she took part in it, because when she applied for jobs, to show that she also took part in such. I mean, these kind of collaborative online workshop models is also not like everybody did before. So I think it was legit to do it.
Yeah, it reduces definitely barriers. Being at home and doing it safely from your couch, whatever color that might look, definitely helps, I think, making it accessible. Thank you. I hope this answers your question. And then another question was, why do you think people aren't getting live stream fatigue when it comes to music and culture, the same way we're seeing Zoom fatigue for other webinar event formats?
I think they do, actually. We saw this in the summertime, that we had way less viewers and it's also different from platform to platform. I think people who are on Facebook are differently using music streams than somebody on YouTube or on Twitch. I think the way of how we do it, with a very high level of production and with a whole club that is providing a space. We're not going to living rooms to stream. We are really going into the place that causes I think a certain momentum for people who also feel it in that moment, to be in that space before and to remember maybe the time, something that they maybe miss or have a bit of a replacement. For others, or maybe that is also something where streaming is heading to, is the conversation with the artist important, that the artist is for you, approachable, accessible. You have a conversation with the artist, talk about records before they play the record, maybe talk about it a bit. So I think music streaming has different faces or facets, and it will show what will be the most consumed version of it. I think we definitely have to develop models where you can actually make money with it, because if we think that streaming is only for free, we don't understand artistic work, and we also don't value it. So we started this on donation base, but the future also needs to be somehow connected with a payment to also value the artistic work more.
Totally agree. I was just remembering in the early days of United Restream, I would actually join Zoom calls where we would watch the stream together, like everyone at home, and we would be dancing and like chatting, and it was a really good time. It felt like clubbing in a way.
I heard about streams where you can only access the Zoom call when you were laying in a bathtub. So the moderator only give you access.
There's the gamification we were talking about earlier, engaging people like that. It was actually fun, and I met a lot of nice people that I didn't know. Obviously, it had that slight feeling of being in a club. Yeah. Third question: how can live stream platforms continue engaging with the crowds once everything reopens?
So you mentioned before that live streaming is something that is also providing access for maybe people who are not able to access clubs because they're not living in that country or disabled. And I think we have to consider this also in the future. Maybe not for every club event, because that is also a lot of technology and money that needs to be provided to do provide a stream like that. But we definitely should think about how we maybe to stream festivals in the future, talks on festivals, conversations that are maybe also more accessible for more people. So I think the streaming part will be part of what we're doing, but we also have to be very careful that we keep the protected space, the safe space. We shouldn't open up the streaming for to show the people in their safe space.
Yeah, you don't want to eradicate clubs totally.
Yeah, and also don't expose nightlife. It is something. Nightlife was always about people also have being different than they maybe are during the day, and I think to always be online, be in a video camera, is something that people wouldn't want to have. So that's something that we also have to kind of find out. What is the right way of where do you stream? What kind of camera position do you want to show? And I'm also very sure that not all the DJs would like to want to be filmed all the time. They also don't like it if you are on the dance floor and filming them.
Obviously, we have a no camera policy for a reason. But yeah, maybe there will be some merged events every now and then. And the fourth question: do you think it would be a good thing if we went back to things the way they were pre-COVID? That's a loaded question.
Yeah, we have to define what was pre-COVID. But let's say the self-definition of our culture is also to be progressive, and progressive is usually not always to think how the history was or the past. So we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to think forward, and also be better than we were before. We have to rethink if it makes sense to travel to Berlin or to another destination for 1 or 2 days with airplanes for 25 euro tickets. Is that how we expect nightlife should be in the future? We have to rethink how we treat our workers, how we pay workers, how we value also local artists compared to international artists flying in, flying out, jet set, paying really high fees. So I think a lot of these things have to being rethought, and that is a process, and I think it already started. I think a lot of these things won't go back as they were, and that's good in many cases.
I think so too. I think moving on from some things that we got used to, maybe we don't even remember why we got used to them. It's actually a nice thing to let go of certain things. 5th question. The pivot that United Restream presented for nightlife and culture was super agile. What sort of learnings do you have that could be useful for a tech founder or startup, for example?
I think what we really used was energy of people. So a lot of motivation, energy for a cause. And that's easy to say because not every startup has such a cause that motivates so much people. But I have the feeling that in a lot of startups, the equity or the idea to make money in a very short time or to sell shares. So I think the purpose-driven startups can definitely learn from how we did it in United Restream, how we create an environment that people could take part, also step up.
Very authentic.
Very, very, very authentic, and a lot of people just took responsibility and brought it to the next level, and we just also let them do it. And a lot of people I met the first time half a year later, but I had phone calls with them every day. So it was also an interesting experience. I don't know if there is so much to learn from what we did, but
there was a lot of trust in the skills of the people. Like, you just had to trust, because if this person is not going to do it, nobody's going to do it. We're not going to do it. So that's what I felt like. So if somebody says, I'm going to set up an Instagram channel in a day and I'm going to make it like this, you had to kind of rely on that person or the team of that person, that they're going to do it and do it good.
I think the question is good because we, just by talking about digital communication and talking about hackathons, you already see that there is somehow a connection being made between the startup scene and club culture. We use tools that were coming from the startup scene. And what I would love to see in the future is that also the startup scene of Berlin values how much of these soft factors nightlife provides also has to be protected, and startups who have in many cases also investors' money need to think about how can they also use their influence, their money, also to make sure that we keep this vibrant culture, that we keep space that is accessible for production, for rehearsal studios, band rehearsal studios, for instance. There's a lack of space, and I think especially startups that move into the so-called hip areas of the city should be very aware that they also should give something back to the community. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
And sitting here in factory, knowing that they're also building music studios, gives me also a good feeling, because there's also a learning curve in an organization like a factory to see that how important the connection between startup culture and music and nightlife is.
Definitely. So, 6th question. Nightlife and club culture are an iconic institution in Berlin. Will clubs and the scene bounce back from the challenges impacts of last year? I think we touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
We will see.
Yeah, I'm really bad in making too many, creating too many thoughts in the future. But I think what we definitely should do is stay united in this crisis, not to split up. And it really helped us in the last month to speak with one voice. You know, yeah. Hopefully, we can maintain this.
Yeah, I think also politically, I think there has been a reckoning of sorts when it comes down to clubs when they work together. So last question. What would be your dream lineup for the first party post-pandemic?
My dream lineup.
Yeah, are you gonna step on people's toes now?
Oh, yeah, I might. I think the dream lineup would definitely be local artists in a small space with a lot of people that I really like to hang out with. So to be really in a cozy place. And I won't drop a name. I will get messages, too many messages. But family and friends will be on the decks. That's for sure.
For days. So yeah, Lutz, thank you so much for taking the
Thank you.
time to talk to us about all you do for club culture and community in Berlin and globally, actually. And thank you, audience at home, for listening and for asking all these amazing questions.
And Lou, you're part of this the scene as well.
I know. So I'm basically thanking myself.
No, I thank you. Thanks for having this conversation, and
Yeah.
for also for your work. That is very, very important for us.
Thank you so much. And yeah, finally, also thanks to the team of Factory Berlin and Beats by Dre for featuring or sponsoring this. And see you next time. Bye.